What's up, guys? I am a whole minute late, and I apologize for that. My laptop was giving me a little bit of drama, so I don't know if you can hear the fan on it, but it's it's overheating a little bit. So, anyways, thanks for tuning in. This is The Good Work, our Facebook Live weekly Wednesday at 6:45 p.m. Little shindig that we do. If it's your first time watching, thanks. If you're not watching live, that's totally okay. What we do is we spend a few minutes talking about a concept or an idea, a philosophy, a truth, something important or valuable. And we hope that it's encouraging to you, that it's meaningful, and fun. Fun is important to me. If this isn't fun, we shouldn't be doing it. That's kind of always my rule of thumb for this kind of thing. So anyways, thanks for coming and hanging out. We are wrapping up a very small series on faith and science, but we kind of hit all the marks we wanted to on that. We tested some concepts. What we want to do tonight is just talk about some questions that you may have, and I threw it out yesterday and today in the Facebook group. It said it doesn't have to be about the topics that we discussed. It can really be about anything. My partner in crime, Rob Reinders, led off the questions asking, where do babies come from? Rob Reinders, father of 2 children, married years, asked where babies come from. So let me go ahead. This one I feel like I can answer pretty easily. Rob, if you don't know where babies come from at this point, there's nothing that I can do to help. There's nothing anyone in this group can do to help. Your dad, your mom, your wife can't even help you at this point. So my suggestion to you is to don't ask any more questions. Okay? Thanks, Rob. Thanks. Anyways, now that we've gotten that nonsense out of the way, we can jump into some actual questions. And I got 2 that I want to play around with, and a third one that I just got that I can highlight a little bit, but maybe we'll talk about it more next week because we'll be in December. The first question that we got was actually from our group last night, Pop Culture Happy Hour. Somebody who wanted to attend but couldn't asked about one of the questions that they saw on our worksheets. And we have all the documents for all of our groups, all the content that we create are all in this Facebook group. You look over on the side, there's a tab that says Files. You see that? Maybe not right now, but you can go see it. You can click it and see all the group discussions that we've had, and we're going to keep adding stuff there, and we hope that's something that's cool for you and something you can enjoy. But the leadoff question last night for Pop Culture Happy Hour was about the death of Charles Manson. Really cheery start, really good news kind of thing. But we had a fun discussion last night, but somebody missed it, and they said, hey, I'd love to know what happened in that discussion. So happy to give you our little brief on it. We talked about it. We kind of talked about what the fascination has always been with Manson. We talked about how pop culture has essentially caricaturized him because of his illness, his schizophrenia, his different mental disorders, his bad hardwiring genetically, that made him sound silly in jail and prison, almost weakening the reality of the monstrous things that he did. I mean, the reality is he was some people's logical conclusion of the hippie love 60s, flowers love, make sex not war kind of thing. And he was that counter to that, some folks would argue that he was the end of that 60s free love experience, that he was able to take very pliable young adults, to manipulate them, to feed them with drugs and messaging, and to bend them to his thoughts and his desires, his own personal brokenness. And so in the time that it was occurring, it was another one of those death blows to that moment in American history. 40, 50 years later, many of us who didn't live through that didn't see that process. Many of us simply saw the news clips of the interviews when he would babble and speak like a lunatic, to be just real blunt, if that's not offensive. And if it is, I'm sorry. And he seemed less like a monster and more like a jester. We talked a little bit about why people enjoy films that are in the genre of horror or suspense or thriller. What's the joy in it? Because obviously for the Tate family, one of the families of the victims, there was no enjoyment. There was only grief. Just like many victims of violence today, we wonder how we cope, how we deal, how we wrestle with those things. And how do we turn that into entertainment? So I think another thing Rob just brings up in the comments that I thought is really good is when do the things that we practice form us? When do we let thoughts, philosophies, dogma form us into not a practice, but a rigid system in which we are not so much players that are in the process of transformation, but we're pawns in someone else's game? The idea of when religion crosses over to cult. I would always argue that while religion, I guess, generally could be accepted as rituals or practices that are regularly done because of a greater belief towards something greater than self, I think the idea when that transfers and you as a human lose some of your humanity, your dignity, your ability to think and question and doubt, that's when that line, for me at least, starts crossing from religious practice into cult. When those who are the influencers in the community are allowed to question you, to judge you, to put burdens of life on you, really, to tell you that your choices aren't yours but theirs. That's the cult. That's the Branch Davidians of Waco. That's Jonestown. That's the Hale-Bopp Comet cult, and many others. And some would argue that there are branches of religions today, including Christianity, that fall more into cult than they do religious practice. I think we need to be careful when we use that word, to be honest. I think there are many people who still choose to take a subordinate role in communities. But then I also think there are those who don't necessarily choose and who don't know that there's another way. So context is always a driving factor there. Anyways, that's where we were on Charles Manson. Didn't think I'd be talking about him twice in a week. That's weird. So the second question that I got was about tomorrow being Thanksgiving, and someone sent me a text message and said, hey, I've got this question, and I know it's a little cliche, but I'm anticipating family drama tomorrow. I've chosen a lifestyle, a profession, just a whole life for myself that a lot of my family doesn't understand. Not they're necessarily against it, but they just don't get it. What do I do? Brilliant. Totally. Yeah, cliche, but it's only cliche because a ton of people who are going to be in that position right where you are, whether it comes down to talking about politics or pop culture things or what's happening in the news, or we all anticipate when we get people who are the closest to us together that there's a tension, that a disagreement could not only break the ice but melt the ice, turn the ice into melted gasoline fumes, and then everything burns, just burns. That was really intense. So I want to offer this. It's a story from a spiritual leader at a time. His name was Henry Nouwen. He was a learned scholar, a really, really smart, compassionate person who lived into his belief as a follower of Jesus. And maybe this story will help, and I hope. And if not, it's still a decent story. So Henry, he tells this story about when he was young in his doing good work in the world, and he went to go live and assist at a facility with those who had a variety of mental handicaps. And when he went there, he realized really quickly that everything that he had studied prior to this time in his life wasn't going to help him with these folks. It wasn't going to help him take care of these folks. He had spent 20 years studying at schools like Notre Dame and Yale and Harvard. And this guy was like light years beyond so many of us when it came to his intellect and his ability to think deeply. But those books and those classes and that education, he realized quickly, was not going to help him at this facility with these residents who had these special specific needs. And he said the one moment that hit him the most was when he was serving a meal in their kitchen area at one time, that he was preparing to serve some meat to one of his coworkers, a fellow assistant. And then one of the residents of the hall yelled at him, "Stop, don't give him meat. He's a Presbyterian." But there's some humor in there. But what Henry says in this story is that it was at that moment he realized that he was irrelevant. That all of his training, all of his expertise, everything that he had built himself to be in that moment didn't prepare him for that comment or how to respond to that moment. And it said what he says is that it did this unpacking of self for him, where he had to realize that his pursuit of relevance, and I don't mean relevance in kind of a you're in or you're out kind of way, but a relevance as in, can I have impact in your life? Am I actually relevant to your life? His relevance was not going to be found in those things that he had positioned himself in. Rather, his relevance was going to be found in removing those things in a whole new series of learnings about himself in this new environment, which means he had to be vulnerable, which means he had to be willing to learn through new successes and new failures, and which means that he had to embrace the idea that these people would love him not based on anything that he had done prior, but because he was simply there. And that's a story that's always kind of stuck with me, because I have always fought to be relevant. And sometimes I fought to be relevant in the superficial way. But there's a lot, even now, where I fight to be relevant. I fight to have meaning in the interactions that I have. Like, that's important to me for some reason. I just watched a movie on Netflix with my son Finn that I didn't know was a movie. I guess it's like 2 years old, but he wasn't around 2 years ago, so I wasn't watching kids movies. But it's this digital animated movie called The Little Prince, and it's an adaptation from an old French author, and probably maybe you've seen it, but it shows this child dealing with becoming an adult and preparing to become an adult. And the whole storyline is all of the adults, the only thing that they ask themselves is, am I essential? Do I have, what is my purpose? Am I essential? The school that she attempts to go into, the question is asked, how are you, or will you be essential? And man, that hit me earlier this week too. Am I essential? That's the relevance question, right? So I would offer this. Thanksgiving tomorrow, family, they don't get what you do. They don't get what you did. They may not get who you are. This could either be a place where you put your defenses up because you need to. And I'm not in your shoes. I can't tell you what to do. That might be the right move. But what also might be the right move, and this is just an option, is to say, it's not my job to bring all of this so that I prove that I'm essential to these people, to prove that I'm relevant. It's my job to be present in this moment and to love. To love folks who I vehemently disagree with a variety of topics, but my background and everything that I've brought, all my good and bad baggage to this moment, doesn't define this moment. This moment defines this moment. This moment defines the dignity that I will give to others, and I will let them give to me. So that doesn't mean you're not going to stress about it. That doesn't mean you're not going to eat yourself up tonight and lose sleep because you just know there's this conversation with Aunt Joan, right? You know Joan. You know what she's like. Anyways, that's my offering. I hope that's helpful. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. The third question, and the one that I think I want a little more time on, because I know it, but I would just kind of blather on and on if I don't gather my thoughts, prepare myself to kind of give you a succinct answer, is the question about the origins of Christmas versus how we practice it now. And it is it's not a complicated story as much as it is a messy story. And I will say that different cultures have hijacked it as they have gained their own socioeconomic and political power. So as generations have come into power, they've taken this season of the year and they've used it to their own agenda, to be real honest. Celebrations at the end of the calendar year or at this winter solstice moment, it's been there since humanity started putting records down. It's the Norse celebrated it as Yule, and in Germany they would pay homage to Odin because they were all, by the way, everyone was afraid of Odin, and he was like this angry old god who would float over the city and watch everyone to get them if they were not Odin-y enough. That's offensive. If you worship Odin and you're watching this, what year is it? Anyways, I will tell you what, I will spend a little bit of more time studying myself on it just to refresh where I know I could blather like I just was. But let me sharpen it up, and we'll spend some time next Wednesday actually specifically addressing that. So thank you for that question. And if you have questions, I'm really happy to do the research for you. You know what I mean? I don't say, hey, ask me anything because I know the stuff. But I do have the resources, and kind of one of my areas of things I do well is research and report. That's kind of one of the things I do. So happy to do that. If you have questions about science, faith, relationships, personal wellness, let me do the footwork. And maybe if I share it with you on something like this and it's meaningful, you can share it with someone else, and that would be great. That's cool. So tomorrow is Thanksgiving. As a matter of fact, after I shut this all down tonight, I'm going to head into the kitchen and start doing the food prep for the meal. I'm pretty excited about it. Do the green beans, get that stuff readied up, get the turkey ready, do the pre-work. But I wanted to throw this out. I know hundreds of you aren't going to watch this between now and then, but if you do see this and you don't have a place to go for Thanksgiving, come over to our house. We will have plenty of food. We will have sports and movies on. Just come hang out and relax. You don't have to bring anything. Just come hang out. That's just an open invite. We're here for you. We don't have family this year, so we thought it'd be cool just to kind of open our doors. So shoot me a message or a text if that's something you'd like to do. And on that note, leave you with this final thought on this Wednesday Eve. I hope you get to go on one of these next 3 or 4 days on airplane mode. You know what I mean? I hope somewhere that it's more than just a 30-minute pocket of time where you can turn stuff off that alerts you, and you can just stop, like grab a meaningful person and go have a cup of coffee or a pint or a book or just nothing. Just go and just sit somewhere and soak up the rays, because it's going to be beautiful here in town this weekend. I hope that you can just kind of turn stuff off on your terms for a long enough time that you can feel it. I think we, and by we I mean me, continually lose the ability to unplug from things, and I need to be reminded regularly that that's actually a very important thing to do to embrace my own humanity. So have a great Thanksgiving. Be safe, be well, and if you're gonna have an argument, argue with love and argue well, but most of all, love. All right, y'all, I will catch you later. Okay. This is the moment where I look down to find the button to close the live broadcast, and it's not a clean exit. It never is. So